Hello and welcome to the Footy Interchange. Adam Papalia, Will Schofield with you, and looking forward to getting right around the country on the podcast today, as we do each and every week, talking all of the issues right around the league as we crisscross the footy highway and do the exchange and the interchange across everybody in each and every state, because they are on the ground there and they know exactly what is going on in their home states. It's a podcast. It's great to have everyone back with us who's listened before, and if you're new to the podcast, great to have your company along as well. But a podcast where we like to just talk through the issues, have some real footy chat, not too clickbaity, hopefully, and get through some of the other clickbaity type bullshit that we see sometimes in the footy media at the moment. Will Schofield, it is great to have you along as well, mate, chatting all the footy issues.
Mate, it's good to be with you. There's a fair bit going on over here in the West, which is exciting, but I feel like we're long enough into the season now to kind of get a read on what teams are doing as well. Like 4 weeks plus opening round feels like enough to get a bit of a read on sides. And yeah, there's always someone that probably jumps up late, like we saw Brisbane and Hawthorn do last year. There's probably a team floating around that has underperformed. And there's probably a couple of teams in the top 8 right now that we rate that might slide, like Essendon last year. But pretty much, and it seems early, we kind of know what the season's doing now, which is exciting, but plenty of good stories floating around.
It certainly is, and gather round, of course, this weekend, which I think people are looking forward to. I haven't, unfortunately, got the call up to head across, but you're making your way.
Well, I haven't got a call up to go across either, but I've paid my way across.
You're going.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm taking myself across to gather round, and yeah, we're going to be doing some chats over there. Went last year. It's always, honestly, it's a bloody good setup. And I think that people will say, oh, why is it always at Adelaide? Well, it's the best setup for it. Melbourne would go well, but they already get the rest of everything.
Yeah, every other round's gather round over there anyway.
It just wouldn't work in Perth. It wouldn't work for the location of the Oval. Adelaide Oval is in the centre of town. Like, it is 300 metres from 100 bars, clubs, restaurants, all right there on Harley Street. Like, it's there. Whereas Optus Stadium, you can't get people in and out on a train. So the vibe's great. Everyone you see is in a good mood. That, not a lot of carry on and fighting and drunken behaviour. People might be having a couple of sherbets, but yeah, just like it feels like it is really like footy central right there, and I'm excited about going over.
Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend with plenty of excellent games to look at as well, Scoey. But as I said, we get around the country in this podcast. We will chat to different people in each state and find out what's actually going on from those people on the ground there as well. Looking forward to taking some listeners' questions and rolling those throughout the pod too. But the first thing today, Scoey, Paul Marsh has stepped down as the CEO of the Players Association.
Yeah, I thought very surprising. We chatted to him on BackChat about 2 weeks ago.
I'm glad you got that episode out before he stepped down.
Yeah, yes and no. Like, it would have been a bit strange to release that after the fact. But also it made me reflect on the actual chat we had. And I was like, oh, did I miss something there? But I think he was pretty professional. Look, I, without speaking for Paul or anyone else involved in those sort of parties, I think he's reading the room here. I think he's looked at potentially what's coming for the AFL, and especially AFL players, and I look at his job and think, who would want to do that? To be quite honest, we've got legalities around concussion and head knocks. We've never had more rule changes. You've got a certain unrest around different things around either the broadcast or the quality of the game or where the fabric of the game's sitting in terms of tribunal and MRO. You've got a drug policy that's being renewed. I don't know who'd want to be representing the players. Like, I don't know who wants that job. So I think he's reading the room and going, I'm going back to cricket. It's easier, and it's probably less drama than the AFL is going to have over the next 5 years.
How big of an issue is this for the players themselves to have someone who's been at the helm for a long time, knows it in and out in terms of all the issues and the background to that, to now have to have someone else come in, as you said, at a really critical time with all of this stuff going on?
Well, I mean, like I said, I don't know who comes in and does that role. I don't think it's a very good role. Like, you're sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't in that role. And I think Paul's done a pretty good job. But there's different complexities around where the AFLPA sits. What sort of power do they have? Who controls it? Where the funding's going? And then they've got to represent players in their best interest. So you're constantly fighting between the AFL and the players. And, a strong voice is what's needed. But I just don't know who is going to put their hand up and really want to do that, because it's it's not a winning role. Like no one's ever going to be happy with you. The players are always going to be screaming out for more money and more facilities for past players. The AFL is always going to want you to be doing deals that benefit them and not the players. And then you've got all these complexities around the changing landscape of what the AFL is, both from a public and an internal point of view. So, yeah, it's important to have experience in that regard, but I just think it's going to be a tough sell to get anyone in the job. And it feels like the way it's happened, I don't know if anyone's seen this coming. I don't know if he's going to sit down for a long-form interview with BackChat or anyone else and then step down 3 weeks later.
Yeah, he's been around to all the states before the start of the season and spoken to the clubs and spoken to the media about what's coming in the future and what the Players Association's there for and the critical things that they're working on. For you, you've been in the system, you've been in those meetings where the Players Associations had to represent the players. What's their most critical function and where have you seen the most benefit across your career of the Players Association? Because we hear them quoted all the time, sticking up for players' rights and all of the things that they do publicly, but behind the scenes, what is the most important function that they serve, you think, for the players?
I think that's another, it depends who you ask. So for me now as a past player, like my areas of interest are services that are available to me now, which is lifetime, effectively, medical help around injury. It's lifetime mental health support, which I access. I use that already. It is the retirement fund that was set up during my playing career and where that sits and how that's distributed through your life post-footy. And that's what I think is the most important now. But, as a player, certainly they're very front and centre in terms of negotiations around the CBA and how the broadcast deal fits into that. So that's an important function. I think going forward, it's really important to be independent of everybody other than the players, which I think they are, but, it depends who you speak to. I think there's sometimes been questions around that. It's like, who funds them, who actually... who's pulling the strings, basically. And I think it's really important to maintain that independency, which I think they've done a pretty good job at. So for players now, it's player rights and player money, really. And you want someone strong representing it. And that starts with the CEO.
Big shoes to fill for the Players Association with Paul Marsh exiting. A lot of other issues bubbling around, Scully, before we start getting around the country and chatting to everyone. A headline coming through last night with Oscar Allen and Don Pyke, and talk that there was a bit of an issue between Don Pyke and Oscar Allen, wanting him to step down, the board wanting Oscar Allen to step down as captain. I think there's some interesting... There's been a lot of interesting developments in this story. I'm not so sure about this one. What's your read on it?
You can bounce around it. I'll just beeline it for you, mate. Like, I saw it. This is Kim Hagdorn reporting on SEN. It was on Drive Show, and that's the exact report, that there was phone calls made. He was quoting phone calls. It seemed pretty legit to me. I put a post out about it this morning, and I had about 5 different news-breaking journalists tell me that it wasn't true. No element of truth. People from Kim's own station posting around it not being true. So I don't know where it is. Is it just made up? Is it inaccurate? Is it poorly researched? Is it true and people don't want to take on the club? I think one thing is for certain. There's a clear amount of unrest within the West Coast Eagles. So what would I like to see? I mean, this is a very... Whether it's accurate or not, you'd like to think that the club could put out some sort of statement around it, and they don't want to be defending themselves against every claim that's ever made, but it feels like it's a journalist saying this in Western Australia. I'd think some sort of addressing from the club would be relevant. I don't think you can put your head in the sand and hope this goes away. It'd go away pretty quickly if you came out as a club and said, hey, this isn't true. Okay, sweet. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's probably where I sit on it. I don't know if it's true or not.
So Chris Gerald, 85, asked us that on social media, asking basically, is it true that there's a rift with the players and the board at the moment? Is it a harmonious place at the moment, or is it a bit of feeling there right now? It clearly feels like obviously everyone's on the same page from the contract point of view with Oscar Allen from last week, but does it go deeper than that?
Well, lots of people asking what's wrong with West Coast right now. Like that's overall, like the question coming in on that, but overall, like what's happening at West Coast, and that starts at the top and it goes right the way through the organisation. So it starts at the board and the CEO, and then it goes right the way through, just like any business. So I would say there's an internal look at what's gone wrong and how can they fix it. I'd say that's already underway with a new CEO and new board members. Without knowing in detail how the function of the board works at West Coast, never been on the board, never sat in a board meeting and haven't had too much to do with that, you'd like to think that they're taking ultimate responsibility of how things work. I mean, that's what a board's function is.
Yep.
So clearly there's a lot of things going wrong with the performance and the continued poor performance, not just it's been a bad year or a bad month or a bad week. It's been a bad period of time, probably going into almost its fourth year of poor performance, which as a past player, like that's pretty frustrating to watch that happen.
And no surety about when that's going to start turning the other way.
Well, you can't just flick a switch and it goes back the other way, can you? So They've got a poor list. They've got a new coach that's trying to get a new game style out that's not getting execution from his players and not getting a whole lot of support from senior players with their performance. So if you've got a poor list and your senior players who we know have played good footy in the past aren't performing well either, that creates real issues. Because what are you meant to do? This is a football team.
Yep.
So in the end, the ultimate responsibility falls back on the players. And that's the same as winning as well. You can't just say, well, it's a great leadership from the CEO and the board and the coach if the players are winning. Yes, Sam Mitchell and the leadership at the Hawks have put a great system in place, but the Hawthorn players are the ones executing it in the end. Just like, they were 0-5 last year. Like that's on the players in the end. So, you got to look at yourself internally. I'm sure everyone is doing that at the West Coast Eagles because it's not right now.
So what happens there now at West Coast with... They don't really have options, I don't think, to make too many changes with some of those senior guys. So how do they go about trying to get them in the best form that they need to be? There's certainly some finger pointing going on after publicly in the media at some of those senior players, Liam Duggan being one of those that's been called out quite a bit, who I know you know really well. How would he take that sort of feedback on? Do they address that? Do the players look at it?
Mate, the only thing that I can do is go back to my playing career and think about times where we won a wooden spoon, where our performance was poor and inconsistent. I personally responded to stronger conversations. And whether that means being dropped or just being called out in front of the group or being a player-led discussion around what's acceptable and what's not, that's what got the best out of me. I don't know if it's as strong as it used to be at West Coast or anywhere else. So maybe times have changed and I'm an old, used-up football player that doesn't have any idea, and I'm happy to take that on board and I'll wear that hat. But I think ultimately if you're playing in the highest league in the country and you're playing for a highly successful club off the field, you need to wear the brunt of that expectation. And the best way to deal with it is direct conversations and knowing exactly what is acceptable and what's not. And that's hard. If you're getting called out, if you're the captain Liam Duggan and you watch that footage against Jones, that was terrible. And you've got to be able to cop that on the chin and sit in front of your playing group, which is who you're answerable to first, not the board or CEO or even your coach. It's to your players and your teammates first. You've got to sit there and watch yourself do that. So the feedback from media or anyone else, fans, sponsors, it pales in significance to what you expect from yourself to give to your teammates. Because in the end, you need to be respected by your teammates. So that was really poor from Duggo. But we've seen over a long period of time that he hasn't always displayed that. In fact, that's probably an outlier. So have the direct conversation, get exposed in front of your teammates and get better. Like it's a pretty easy fix. You got to have the conversation, then you got to get better.
Can you remember one of those that you copped?
Mate, Darren Glass. Mate, I remember the first ever intra-club game I ever played. It was West Coast v West Coast. I trailed my man into a contest with Chad Jones. He put a knee straight in Glassy's spine. And Glassy turned around and basically had me up against a wall if there was a virtual wall and was like, you ever let that happen to another teammate, you'll never play here again, effectively. And that's an on-field direct discussion. And I don't reckon I ever let that happen again. And it was a direct thing. I used to sit there in team meetings. Again, Glassy would just go, Scully, watch yourself here, mate. You tell me if it's acceptable or not. And it was piss poor. Like I'd be drifting around, seeing what these players are doing now. I've been that guy too, and that's why I was dropped a lot because I wasn't consistent enough. But how I got better and back in the team was you need to listen after a direct conversation and the feeling of sickness in your stomach when you're called out in front of your teammates. There's nothing worse. Back page, social media, all this carry on. There's nothing worse than your captain sitting there and going, that's not good enough.
I can't imagine sitting through that, Sky. I would not handle that well whatsoever. So hopefully we don't have that direct feedback session after the podcast today. I know we're talking a lot of West Coast.
Papalia, that's not good enough.
Not good enough up against the wall. Speaking of feedback, a lot of feedbacking about Harley Reed the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
I was wanting to make this a bit of a Harley Reed free zone today.
Oh, but feel free to talk
But
about it.
I'm going to talk about it anyway. Well, because it's the other way around, right? So he goes out on the weekend, has 25 touches, doesn't give one free kick away on the weekend, and no one really talks about it. Whereas the 2 weeks beforehand, he's copped it from everywhere.
Yeah. What would you like me to do? Talk about it?
Well, a little bit. It's just.
Well, why don't you? You're a media person.
I think it was a good response from him to come out on the weekend and to be one of West Coast's best players. So as much as you get the criticism, you should get the plaudits back the other way as well.
Well, I haven't been personally criticising. I've been defending the criticism.
I'm not saying you in
I know,
particular. I'm talking.
So it's difficult for me. I don't want to praise the other way either because I haven't been doing either. I've just been sort of defending probably the person in terms of he's a 19-year-old and he's going to be good and he's going to be bad. He's going to be inconsistent. So there's the inconsistency for you. There's 25 touches in a great game. So, but I don't really want to break his game down because he's a 19-year-old. So continue on. It'd be good to see him keep playing that way. I don't know if he's a halfback flanker, to be honest.
Yeah, so a bit of a change in role. Got amongst the footy. Will that help him get back into the midfield?
I mean, that's a coaching decision for West Coast. I just don't think he's a halfback flanker. I think they're just trying to get his confidence up, and that's good. Good for him.
Saw Sam Darcy play here on the weekend. Speaking of instant reactions, it's built over a few weeks, but a lot of people coming out saying he's the best player in the competition right now. Do you agree?
I mean, some of the marks he took against very good opposition were elite.
They were. Is he the best player right now, or is this one where we're just reacting? And he will be the best player in the comp in a year's time.
No, look,
6 months' time.
Will Schofield says Sam Darcy isn't the best player in the comp. You know, like
I'm not trying to get that out.
I know,
it's more about the reaction of.
My first reaction is no. Yeah. I think there's players that have done it for longer and more consistent and performed at a consistent level. Then he's had the opportunity to. Yep. Like he isn't. He's a second-year player, third-year player. So I think he's a superstar, going to be even a bigger superstar.
He's so scary as a prospect.
I think if you're a backman and you got to play on Sam Darcy, I think take your opportunity now and try to bully him, because as soon as he realises that he's what he is, maybe he already has, he's going to be unstoppable. I still think he's stoppable, and you got to be aggressive and you got to be dirty, to be honest.
Get stuck doing
mate. He's a young kid, and it might sound a little bit aggressive or whatever you want to say, but like I think you got to target him on and off the ball and like really put him off his game. I think the same about Nick Dacos. I've spoken the same about him.
Yeah.
No one's immune to a physical and a verbal barrage. You can do it respectfully in terms of you're not discriminating against anyone, but you call them out on things that may not do well, or maybe that might get in their head. Like you have to use every tool at your advantage, because if you don't, Nick Dacos will have 45 and kick 5, and Sam Darcy will have 17 contested marks and kick 100. So you need to use every tool, and that's a tool that I think is coming out of the game a little bit. There's a lot of respect being shown from forwards to backs, probably a little bit too much for my liking. I like the McAndrew back and forth with Thilthorpe. I liked that. Yeah, I liked it. It's an emotional game. I like that sort of stuff. I'd like to see someone go at Sam Darcy like that. But star.
Yeah,
I could never stop him, clearly.
Be so good. I think the young key forwards in the comp at the moment are looking so good, and it's really exciting for the league as well.
They're also tall. They're like 205 centimetres tall, and they move like a midfielder.
Yeah, we showed the graphic on Fox on the weekend of the evolution of the key forwards from Derm, who was doing the game with us, all the way through to now Sam Darcy, and they're going from 189 centimetres now up to 206, 208, and it's quite ridiculous, really, the evolution. One great key forward before we start jumping around the country is Darcy Fogarty, head of Gather Round as well. He has gone and got a little bit of temporary ink with a beer can.
Oh, so they're not real?
On his bicep. No, it's not real.
And what is it?
It's like a
kid's drawing,
henna tattoo or something like that that'll be there. Could we see?
I thought it was real.
More sponsorship like this happening in the AFL? You think over the next little while?
We're talking
players like getting logos and stuff henna tattooed on their arms.
We're talking.
And what are you going to do for Gather Round this weekend just to promote the brand?
Well, look. First springs to mind is Buddha Hocking, or should I say Whiskers Hocking? Right. So. What am I going to do? I'm floating this without approval from anybody, but our Dan,
Yes.
Dan Const,
Yep.
Big Eagles man.
Yep.
I believe he's floating tattooing a spoon on him if they lose to Carlton. And you know on social media who the biggest man in the business is at Carlton.
Yes.
Their Dan.
Yep. So they go head to head.
Dan v Dan
Whoever
for
loses.
a spoon. So that's what I'm hearing. But I'm disappointed that's not a real tattoo from Fogarty.
I'm like 99% sure it's not a real
bit
tattoo.
soft, isn't it?
That's a fair way to go to get a proper one.
It was pretty big.
It was huge on the bicep as well. So when he gives it the Cobras on the weekend, you'll see it there. I wonder if we'll see it creep into the AFL a bit more.
Just look for me on the hill, mate. I'll be on the hill, West Coast Carlton. You'll see me there somewhere.
Done. Looking for Scully out there on the hill at Adelaide Oval. Let's get stuck into it. Let's get around the country. We'll check in with each and every state with our experts there, find out what is actually happening on the ground here on the Footy Interchange. Well, the Footy Interchange, Adam Papalia, Will Schofield, as we head across to, well, I think we're heading across to Victoria, but our man, Drew Jones, is actually on the road today, Scully. So we'll find out where he actually is as he's heading across to gather round. Didn't quite get the budget to head across on the plane. So making the drive across, Drew, how's it going?
The chopper not available for the Fox Sports team, unfortunately. So, Tintinara, Tony, is that right? Correct. We're about 2 hours from Adelaide at the moment. So, making our way over. We'll be there in time for AFL tonight, Tuesday night, and then the whole week. So, excited for the Festival of Footy.
So is it in your, contract or whatever you'd like to do with Fox Footy, Drew, that you have a driver at all times? Is that what Tony is or what's going on here?
I see nodding. No, I took a small stint a little bit earlier, but no, just ideally it would have been sort of limousine or a stretch Hummer, just the Fox Sports vehicle today.
Very good. Esky, the best in the business, so I'm sure he's looking after you on the way across. And what's the playlist going on in the car? What's the conversation?
I actually wanted to ask you guys, what's your go-to band for a long road trip? So we sort of started this long-term joke because 2 years ago when we first drove over, we heard Phil Collins like 10 times. So now every time Phil Collins or Genesis come on, it's just like an on-running joke. But we had a bit of Pearl Jam earlier, Incubus, like a deep cut from Incubus. Yeah, there's been some Grinspoon. Yeah, there's been some good right at the moment.
That's my sort of playlist. I like that.
I'd be going the Meatloaf Bad Out of Hell album from start to finish. That will take you on a journey.
Nice. Gather around. Give us some footy, Drewy. What's going on? Gather around.
Yeah, so Thursday night I can't wait for. I think a couple of times we've had Adelaide v Carlton where the Crows came out really hot. First ever gather round game. I reckon Ben Keys kicked 4. And then last year it was Melbourne, Adelaide, I reckon, which was a bit of a fizzer. But this year feels like a genuine blockbuster to start things off. So Crows hard done by, could easily be unbeaten to start the season, but it's certainly one of the buzz teams. No one would be surprised if they came out Thursday night and Reilly Fieldthorpe kicks 5. Jake Saliga has a big night and they beat the Cats. And then Geelong, we're still trying to work out whether they're contenders or not. But I think this is a really great way to kick off Thursday night. And then, Collingwood Sydney is just always a big game. So I think they've started really strong. And then can't wait to chat to Kenny Hinkley tomorrow about Sunday night. Jack in we're not going to be surprised if Jack kicks a goal and gets the error celebration.
We're copping some nice Adelaide so. In and out of coverage here, but that's fine.
Mobile reception in country Australia.
No,
the aeroplane celebration, that would be interesting to see. I think the Hawks and the Power game's going to be fascinating in the AFL as they always do, just making the interesting call on the scheduling. Speaking of Hawthorn, though, massive blow for them with Will Day's going to be out for an extended period of time.
Felt like he was finally getting a run at it, didn't he, Will Day? Had a great pre-season, then huge in opening round. Hasn't the last couple of weeks been as prolific as the start of the season, but now foot stress fracture. So again, the injury curse bites for Will Day, which is such a shame for the Hawks. I mean, I think if there's anywhere on the ground where they've shown they don't have to have star power to still be quite destructive, it's through the midfield. They've been able to cover for James Worpel John Newcomb, we know his story. Josh Ward's come in and played a role for them, but Will Day was their genuine classy player through the mid part of the ground, can go forward and kick goals. So it's definitely a blow. But 4 months gets him back for the latter part of the season, so he could still play a role if we think the Hawks are going to be contending.
Hey, Drewy, I want to finish off on some fantasy news. Goat Fantasy News on X, of course, for all your fantasy updates. Will Day might be one little look, but there's a fair bit else going on in fantasy land. We got rookies coming up. We got big players, expensive ones losing value. How are you reading the entire landscape? Any special add-ons for us?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people went with the double downgrade last week, but if you didn't get Reilly Bice from Sydney, got to pull the trigger this week. So 125, designated kicker. Callum Mills out with injury at the moment, so they're struggling for numbers. The break-even's low. So I would say get on Reilly Bice. So downgrade whatever defender you feel like you can sacrifice. Sorry, my thing was going in and out. So if you can sacrifice a defender, get down to Reilly Bice, and then that's a chance to do an upgrade through the
we might have hit
field. So say for a school who's got an anchor all the way up to Angus Brayshaw.
Great.
So Dockers have a great run the next 2 weeks. So that would be someone you want to invest in.
Nice. Thanks, Drew. We'll leave you there, mate. The mobile reception not doing us any favours. Thank you very much. Drew Jones there from Fox Sports, along with Esky riding shotgun, just getting the chauffeur-driven trip across.
I'll finish off what Drew was trying to say there. Brayshaw, Sarong, Neal are the bargain midfielders that you need. Maybe a Matty Rowell at the Gold Coast Suns, but Freo and Brisbane, maybe McCluggage. That's the role that we're looking at from a fantasy point of view.
Nicely done. This is the Footy Interchange. The Footy Interchange, well, let's get across to what is going to be the absolute centre of the footy universe this weekend with Gather Round over there in South Australia. Sim Thomas-Wilson from the Adelaide Advertiser and from Code Sports is with us. Sim, so much to unpack about South Australian footy. Gather Round we'll talk about as well. But firstly, the Crows, blueing about free kicks, got a correction from the AFL, coulda, woulda, shoulda. It doesn't mean much at the end of the day. I know the Crows fans are feeling pretty hard done by at the moment. And the man at the centre of it, who probably should have got the free kick, he might be in some doubt for this weekend.
Yeah, hey guys, how you going? Yeah, first up, Isaac Rankin is in doubt of missing Thursday night. He's got a cuff, not to the calf on against the Suns, and just been there with Matthew Neitz, and he said they don't have to see how he goes at their captain's run tomorrow, but given how important of a player Rankin is, they might not risk him. So that could be a big blow for the Crows in the Thursday night gather round against Geelong opener. So that's a thing. And obviously here the big talk has been about whether they were robbed again. The meme came out, that guy right in front of me. That's what the Crows fans have been thinking. So it's all but it's like the fourth time in the past 2 years the AFL's conceded that they a contentious call against the Crows should have gone their way. But for them, I think they're just saying we can't get the win from that. We've got to move on. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, well, Isaac Rankin maybe missing is a bigger blow to my fantasy side, to be really honest, Sim. So that's going to be an interesting one. If he misses with a cork, you'd be absolutely spewing up both as an Adelaide fan, supporter and player. So we'll see how that goes. One of his teammates, though, is dominating and certainly was a big part of the back end of that game against Gold Coast on the weekend. Reilly Thilthorpe, how good is he going and how good's he going to be?
Yeah, he is going really, really good. I think Champion Data had him last week as a number one player in the competition across 6 weeks, back end of last season. So this season, which is quite incredible for a key forward. And then he's went out and dominated against Gold Coast. He's someone before. He's a big boy. He is generally massive, not only tall, but just thick. So you'd hate to play against him if you're a key defender. I think, it's interesting one, him and Sam Darcy. There's some really good young key forwards coming through. So I think we kind of said in the paper today he could win the Coleman if he stays fit, Thilthorpe. So Yeah, you never know.
He's going extremely well and kicking goals for fun and an absolute beast of a full forward for the Crows at the moment. We switch across town and Port Adelaide. I mean, the heat just goes up again. A shock loss really to the Saints on the weekend, and the talk about the coach and handballing on earlier, it just keeps bubbling away in the background.
Yeah, it keeps bubbling away, and I guess now the talk is, the issue is this going to be a wasted year for them? Like, are they going to make finals? We don't know. And they're just doing this handover. What's it going to achieve? Just been there with Chad Corn's assistant coach, having a chat with him. And he says they are confident they can bounce back. He's pointed to Brisbane, how they started last year and how Hawthorn started last year, still able to win the premiership and make finals respectively. But unlike them, the Power just didn't look like a good side on Sunday. They got a fair bit went right for them in terms of their intent, and their tackling pressure was actually pretty good, which wasn't good against Collingwood or Essendon, but fundamental skills killed them in the end, even with Zach Butters back. That was a game they had to win against St Kilda, really.
They have a nightmare run coming up, including Hawthorn, including Adelaide, including Geelong, including the Bulldogs. So they'd want to be the Brisbane of last year and be getting their way back to a premiership, because if they don't, they're going to be about 2 and not a lot. So interesting watch there. I think they need to sort their stuff out. You're on the ground in Gather Round. You got anything special for us, Sim, in terms of what's happening on the ground there for the big weekend of footy in South Australia?
Yeah, it's going to be massive here. Obviously, going past Adelaide Oval, they're setting up the fan site where they've got a zip line across the river. If you want to jump on that, Scully, have a bit of fun on that one.
Wow.
But yes, there's a lot just going around everywhere, really. All the pubs have got events. There's the Barossa Valley. That's going to be pretty big out of the Barossa Valley, because that's what the Premier has wanted ever since they got Gather Round, to have the games out there. So that could be, even though the games aren't the best ones, that could be a real big event out there. And obviously Norwood Oval as well is all people love going out there. So it could be a big one. And I reckon, just the sneaky one here, watch out for maybe an announcement from the Premier on Sunday before the Port Hawthorn game about if it stays here longer term.
We will keep an eye on that, Sim. And before we let you go, Jack Higgins, is he public enemy number one right now after saying on ground after the match that he hates Adelaide? He's not going to do anything. He's going to sit in his hotel room and play Call of Duty.
That's what last yours we have. Like, who doesn't like Adelaide? Who cares? He's missing out. It's good. I think it was pretty fun. I mean, he can say what he wants. He's playing that well at the moment. He is. Yeah, there's a small forward. So if he doesn't want to enjoy Adelaide, it's his loss.
I think the Premier's offered to take him and give him a bit of a tour of some of the best destinations around the city as well.
He'll be not interested. He'll be in Verdansk, which is a level in Call of Duty. I might see him there.
Do that. Sim, last one. Just asking for some selections of players that might be flying under the radar at the moment that aren't getting all the publicity at Port or the Crows. Who are you thinking?
Yeah. Will's going to be happy with these two. For the Crows, Mitch Hinge, I reckon, is for a guy who we were like, is he actually going to be in the team now that Isaac Cummins came in? He's been really good off half back for them. Like against North Melbourne, he was massive for the Crows. And then for Port, if they even are remotely competitive, if they make finals, I reckon lock in Aliir for an All-Australian spot.
A couple of backmen. I like it. Well done, Sim.
I'll be very happy. Thanks, Sim. Enjoy Gather Round.
Thanks, guys.
Sim Thomas-Wilson there in Adelaide. Zipline, Scully?
No, absolutely.
Are we locking you into
I've been
one?
here at the Mudgara Bridge.
Yes.
That's a great setup.
You're not going to do it in Adelaide this weekend?
No, absolutely not. I'll be locking in at a pub somewhere after I've done interviews. I'm going to the pub. I'm having beers. That's pretty much my
good
agenda.
Yeah, that sounds very good. In fact, great to have a chat to Sim there over there in Adelaide. Of course, Gather Round's going to be a great event. The Footy Interchange as we head across to Queensland and check in with Tom Rockliff, of course. Rockliff Finance for all your finance needs. Tommy, great to chat to you as always, mate. Should we just send the Premiership Cup to Queensland now and you can fight between Brisbane and Gold Coast as to who's going to have it?
Yeah, well, it may be the case, isn't it? I don't think we've ever been undefeated this long into a season from both clubs. So they've both been outstanding. Well, not outstanding. That's probably not fair. Brisbane seem like they're just going, but winning games of footy. So that's a scary thing for them. And the Gold Coast Suns, they've got the edge about them. We spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, and Scully was big on it as well. You can see that they've got the fire in the belly now, and they're hard to play against. You've seen McAndrew after the game, but you've seen it throughout as well. But they get in their opposition face, and they've got the talent to back it up now as well. And Reilly was sensational, found his feet off halfback, and their ball movement was electric at times against the Adelaide Crows.
Can you stay on McAndrew there? I'm not. Look, we don't know each other best mates, but like you would have liked that. I know you would have liked McAndrew. You would have rated that surely, because I can see you doing the same thing.
Yeah, well, I got a fine for doing something similar to Boomer years ago after the siren, and he looked after me. I probably said the wrong thing. I definitely said the wrong thing, but he looked after me. But yeah, I've never seen it after the game like that. They were pushing and shoving for a good 3 minutes, and teammates pulling them apart. And even after they got separated, they had another go and bumping each other in the back. It was full on. But yeah, you've got to like it. I mean, it's been so hard for the Gold Coast for a long period of time up here, and even the Adelaide Crows as well. I mean, they haven't played finals since 2017, since that grand final. So a bit of passion and excitement and a bit of verbaling from both teams. It's quite good. I wouldn't be able to back it up with fisticuffs, but verbally I was not too bad.
That's what I was thinking. I'd be on the lip as well, and then I'd be running off hoping someone else would deal with it for me.
He's picked on literally the biggest bloke in the AFL. Just about.
Mac's not small though.
True,
big man.
But Phil Thorpe's a big fella too. Yeah, I'd be absolutely ducking away from anywhere going near that. Well and truly. The Suns, it's great. They've got that edge, as you said, Tommy, and looking good. The Lions, on the other hand, it's kind of scary, I think, the fact that they're actually not playing well, but they're still winning.
How are they under the radar?
Like, it's different to last year, but they've got wins on the board now, so they're better placed.
Yeah, they certainly are. I mean, you think about their season last year, you nearly written them off by the time we got to Anzac round when the Giants touched them up in Canberra. So that was about around 6 or 7. This year, they potentially be 6 or 7 and zip, and they're not playing their best footy, which is scary. Once it all comes together for them, they're going to be near impossible to beat, which is a scary thing. I mean, they are just going. They only beat Richmond by 5 goals. You would have expected them to win that by a fair bit more. So I think once it all clicks for them, they're going to be near impossible to beat, particularly on their home deck. So it's exciting times for the Lions, even though they're just going now. You don't want to flirt with form, but I mean, they're coming off the premiership last year, and they've started 4 and zip or wherever they are now. I mean, it sets themselves up really well for the back half of the year.
I've got a Brownlow favourite in Queensland, in Matt Rowell. Have I read correctly? You've got someone to take me on in Queensland as well?
Well, potentially. I mean, I like Matty Rowell as well. He was a bit quieter on the weekend. But Lockie Neal, again, is flying under the radar. He's had 40, 42 and 35 in a couple of games. So there's 6 votes minimum there. And we've seen him in the past. The umpires have given him 3 when he's had 10 possessions. So it may happen again. We're not sure. But I think he's still flying under the radar. I apologise for the kids in the background there. School holidays over here in Queensland at the moment. But, yeah, I think Lockie Neal, if he continues to have those sort of numbers, he's going to poll really well. We know the umpires like him. Could he potentially win a 3rd Brownlow medal?
I did want you to give us
3 time.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? I did want you to give us a couple of players flying under the radar, maybe not as high profile as Lockie Neal, but anyone else from the Suns or the Lions you think that should be getting a few more accolades?
Well, I think Zach Bailey, he's back to his best. He's kicking bags, having an impact up the ground. But I think we're going to see him absolutely back to his best in the second half of the year, or even now. I mean, his ability to hit the scoreboard, what he does offensively, he's a real weapon for the Brisbane Lions. And there's another bloke who's flown under the radar for 10, 15 years now, and it's a big ruckman at the Gold Coast Suns, Jared Witts. He just flies under the radar across the competition. He is one of the best ruckmen in the competition still now. Never seen a bloke look sore in a warm-up, sore during the game, sore post-game, but just gets it done week in, week out. And you would love to road to him. He's silver service. I would have had 60 if I'd have been roving him at times.
Hey, mate, before we let you go, I listened to your call on Triple M. I was tuned in on whatever day that was. Can you just give me the inside word on where Simon Black was for the first quarter? Because that was making me piss myself laughing. He's rolled in with 2 minutes to go in the first quarter. Where was he?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. He said he was late in traffic, but he left half an hour after me. It took him 2.5 hours. It took me an hour. I'm sure he was catching waves down at Burleigh and forgot the daylight savings hadn't kicked in, and we were on at 12:20, not 1:20.
Jeez, it was funny. Like Brownlow medalist just strolling in. He had a coffee in his hand.
Just casual as you like.
What's he doing?
I suppose you can do that when you run flags and Brownlows.
Lee
and
Spur sort of
Norm Smiths and
operator, though.
everything.
Just like, oh, g'day, guys. Thought we started an hour ago. How good.
Love it. Tommy, great stuff, mate. We'll leave you back to the school holidays. Good luck.
Sensational. Thanks, guys.
Tom Rockliff there over in Queensland. They are going beautifully in the Sunshine State right now, both the Gold Coast Suns and of the Brisbane Lions. Are we locking the Suns in for finals?
Yes.
Already?
Yes.
Done. Tick.
Top four, even.
Top four. Wow.
Oh, well, they've already won games away.
True.
And if they do a few more of that, they'll win every game at home. Like, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Top four.
So I think it's good for the comp having them up.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Scary. Finally, we're seeing perhaps the best of the Suns. This is the Footy Interchange. The Footy Interchange, we head to New South Wales with Cal Sinclair to talk all things Swans and the Giants as well. Cal, welcome to you, mate. Great to chat to you as always, and great to see for those watching on YouTube. We've got the headset back in action this week. Love your work, Cal. Swans and Pies, big game coming up this week.
Yeah, had to bring the headset back. Just need a co-pilot at the moment. But huge game. I probably thought the Swans. I earmarked it last week. It's probably a danger game against the North Melbourne, but who were very, very disappointing. But I think this is a huge game for their season. We've seen them probably being inconsistent at the start of this year, but they need to get momentum under their belt, and there's no better way than to front up to a pretty informed Pies outfit, and hopefully they can take them down over the weekend. But unfortunately, I'll be tipping the Pies to win comfortably.
This is your captain speaking. Thank you for joining us, Cal Sinclair. The Swans win over North Melbourne easily, and a predominant display against a side that I think some people thought were absolutely back in business. Few injuries coming out of it, though. Is their depth going to be tested?
I reckon their depth's being tested massively. I was going through, I guess, the injury update before, and you got names like Melican, Cunningham. Logan McDonald may return, but it's going to be interesting to see how that forward dynamic kind of goes about things. But Errol Goulden, he's no closer to a return at all if this season. Callum Mills is still on the mend. Taylor Adams has had a setback. So they've got a world of hurt, and I just kind of question where their depth is kind of going at the moment. They got comfortably beaten their reserve side by North Melbourne as well. So they're definitely going to be struggling, I reckon, for quality players in their starting 22, probably until the midpoint of this year.
Yeah, huge game against the Pies at Adelaide Oval on Friday night. We switch across to the Giants. Really comfortable win, clearly, for them against the Eagles on the weekend. We spoke about Sam Darcy off the top. But for you, Jesse Hogan, Sam Darcy, which one are you taking right now? Hogan was unbelievable on the weekend with his accuracy and the amount of goals he kicked from limited disposals.
I think one thing I love about Jesse Hogan is that he makes his possessions count. Like when he gets in front of goal, you can basically take your money to the bank because he literally is just putting them in left, right and centre. They're worth, sometimes as a forward, you might only get a couple of shots on goal. I know he had probably about a dozen on the weekend, but, he's just accuracy is something he obviously takes significant pride in. Like, Sam Darcy, I think is probably hard to, if you're going to take someone, you would take him. But I think the real loser out of Jesse Hogan is the Melbourne and Fremantle Football Club. Like if they had this form, a decade ago, it's just probably crazy. I guess how much money Jesse Hogan probably would have made over his career. So I think if you're Freo and Melbourne, you'd be absolutely kicking yourself at seeing what this guy's doing at 30 years of age. So he seems like his body's in good shape. He seems like he's in a really good spot mentally. But yeah, I think it's really up to Sam Darcy and Jesse Hogan, who's probably going to take out the Callum this year.
Yeah, well, they've got him on prime time against St Kilda at Norwood Oval this weekend. Is that going to suit their playing style? Does it get a bit blowy at Norwood? Oh, you tell me, you played there?
Mate, unfortunately, Scully, I have played a fair bit of footy in the twos, mate. So we, at Norwood, mate, it's a very, very contested style of ground. The surface is not going to be, up to the scratch of, AFL standard, in my view. I'm sure they would have done a fair bit of work in the background to sample. But the reality is it's going to be a very contested game. Will that suit either of these sides? Probably I'd probably say Giants' bodies are probably a little bit more hardened than what St Kilda's are. But ideally, they want free-flowing footy. They want to run and carry. It's an exciting brand to watch. I'm not sure if the Norwood Footy Club will be, will be the host of that game style on the weekend.
You're going to see some gale force winds blowing across going to one end. Doesn't it do that? I reckon I've seen some big goals out of the middle at Norwood.
Yeah, it reminds me of Williamstown back in the day. I think when you're playing right on the beach there and it's completely blowy. But look, I think if you're the Giants, once again, I think Brisbane made the comment during the week, they just can't get on the main ovals, and obviously their turnout might not be as substantial as other clubs, but you'd like to think the best teams get the best opportunities to play on the best grounds.
Another player I wanted to ask you about, and it might go into a conversation about players that are flying under the radar, trying to get a bit of a nomination from you from both Sydney and the Giants as well. But Reilly, we saw him kick a great goal over at this part of the world a couple of weeks ago, but he was phenomenal on the weekend.
Yeah, and I think Scully would know this, that I love these kind of stories. I think I read earlier that he kind of had, I guess, a small stint at the GWS kind of VFL side, only played a couple of games, did his time at the Albury Tigers at local footy. He was actually operating an excavator, basically to earn ends meet. Awesome story. Then goes down to Werribee and follows the Swans as a fan, but premiership player at Werribee, team of the year, and having a real impact at the Swans. And I guess that's the great story about, I guess, potentially that it's unfortunate there are injuries that happen obviously to key players, but it's great to see young guys like him get an opportunity when probably 3 or 4 years ago, that mightn't have been the case.
Absolute footy factory down there at Werribee. Mick Barlow footy factory, I'm pretty sure. Like, you got guys like Sean Manor coming out of there, Jack Henderson, who's at Melbourne now. I'm sure there's more that I'm missing. So another one out of that. Mate, thanks for your time today. Well done on jumping on very quickly. And I enjoyed the captain's headset once again.
No worries.
Sinclair is flying away from us at the moment. We need to get the pilot's hat for him, I reckon, next week as well. Yeah, very, very good. Footy going pretty well in New South Wales too. Footy Interchange as we look around Western Australia now. I know we spoke a fair bit about West Coast and Oscar Allen and Don Pyke and all of that off the top, Scully, as well as the results of the Eagles on the park as well. But we head now to Eliza Reilly from Code Sports, who joins us. Eliza, great to chat to you. On the field, West Coast, to me, and I know Scully's been pretty strong on it as well, seemed a little strange, some of the selections heading over to the Giants, given that they had so many key forwards. It was a bit of a trial by fire for some of the young debutants for the Eagles.
Yeah, obviously Sandy Brock's been a big talking point this week, not for his performance, because I thought, to be honest, he did show some signs that he's going to be a capable defender at AFL level if he continues to get an opportunity. And I don't think he looked out of place in some contests, but in saying that, I don't think the Eagles should have dropped Harry Edwards, because you're throwing Sandy Brock to the Wolves essentially up against Jesse Hogan, who kicks 9 goals, obviously equal career high for him. So there's been a lot of discussion about this particular selection decision, and I think the genesis of it is, if Harry Edwards was in the team, he could probably be that big body to man up Jesse Hogan and at least get him into a bit of a wrestle, and then Sandy Brock can play more of that intercept sort of coming across role, which Jeremy McGovern obviously played so well before he injured his groin. So Andrew McQualter defended the decision post-game. He reckons not even the great Stephen Silvani could have defended Jesse Hogan, especially with the supply and the speed the Giants were able to get on the ball, but it's definitely an odd one nonetheless.
Yeah, but the criticism wasn't of Sandy Brock, so whether or not Stephen Silvani could have stopped them wasn't the point. It was like, why don't you put someone with more experience into the Wolves' den and then let a first-game player build some confidence while playing? The really interesting one's going to be if Carlton bring back Harry Mackay, you got Charlie Kerner on Harry Mackay. If Harry Edwards doesn't play this week, I'll just hang him up, I reckon. Fremantle, Eliza, on the other hand, they are clearly playing a different brand of footy. They've gone from top 4 in uncontested marks in the competition to bottom 4. They're playing faster and quicker, and there's some specific players helping them do that.
Yeah, I want to talk about 3 in particular, being Shea Bolton, Isaiah Dudley and Murphy Reed, and the difference that a bit of footy IQ in that forward line makes, because for so many years we've been saying that this Fremantle forward line has the talent and has the capabilities to deliver on its potential. But I think it finally is starting to, because of these three players who turn, sort of half 50-50 chances into opportunities and goals. There's that football smarts is so important inside 50, and you've got those three sort of sitting at the feet of Josh Tracy, who we know is having another outstanding year, and Jai Amos, who's still trying to find his place in this season after, getting a bit thrown around last year. But that sort of crumbing ability inside 50 is so important. And we saw on the weekend add in Michael Frederick, who kicks 3, his sort of best return for the season. And I think that forward line is starting to sort of deliver on its potential finally.
That step from Dudley was awesome, or Deadly, as we're starting to call him now
I didn't
already.
see that live, but I saw the replay.
It was filthy.
Harmsy just got put into next year.
It was so good.
Shooting star meme gone.
And Shea Bolton, Scully, if he takes that mark, where does that rank?
Quite possibly best ever.
It was unbelievable.
I mean, you just put the ribbon on top that's the lobster on the back of Roy Lob's head.
He had a target to aim for.
Yeah, mate, it would have been unbelievable.
Apparently he took one in pre-season and they reckon it was mark of the century, but it was in pre-season and they didn't even film it. It was during match sim.
Hang on, they would have tape of that. I can guarantee you one thing, at AFL level, they tape everything that happens on the field. So I'm going to chase that one down.
They'll have it somewhere.
Release the tape.
Yes, release the tapes.
Yes.
Release the tape.
Good intel, Eliza. I like
Very
it.
good. At Freo, we stick with them. An injury blow. Looks like Nathan O'Driscoll's going to be missing. I think we've seen him on some crutches today. But some big selection issues to come with Sean Darcy and Hayden Young potentially available.
Yeah, obviously the Cavalry's starting to come back, and I think Hayden Young declared in the rooms he's 100% ready to go and get himself back to AFL level after kicking the 3 goals from 19 touches for Peel Thunder, despite having a few Claremont mids hanging off him at every stoppage. So he's ready to go. He's overcome that hamstring niggle, and he's going to be a big addition to Fremantle's midfield, whereas the Sean Darcy selection question is a very much more difficult one for the Dockers, because Luke Jackson having that injury on the weekend sort of forces their hand a little bit. But at the same time, the Dockers are playing a team like Richmond, who you'd think they should be able to beat, regardless of whether Sean Darcy plays or not. So I think he's more of a 50-50 selection question, and we'll wait to see when the teams drop later in the week. But I think in the ideal world, you'd love to see him get at least another week at waffle level to find that match fitness before you bring him back to the AFL side. So it's going to be a really interesting one. Yeah, that Jackson hamstring's coming at an inopportune time.
Question without notice, Eliza. How long's Hayden Young been out for? Was it the 10? Like, it hasn't been a 4-week hammy. Like, he's been out for 8 weeks. Am I making that up, or is that about right?
I think he did have an initial hamstring and then he sort of retweaked it again from memory. And he's obviously had that setback late last year as well with that fracture to his leg. So he has basically had a very interrupted pre-season. And I'm pretty sure it's been the 2 hamstrings that have sort of been the cause of that longer layoff.
Yeah, well, I think it's a big risk to bring either of them back, to be honest, because I don't think they played much more than 60 minutes each. So that's a big jump up in time and in commitment. And once you get to the AFL, there's nowhere to hide. So you'd hate to see either of them come back too early and get injured again. That would be a disaster for the Dockers, especially for Sean Darcy, given the time he's spent out of the game. Eliza, before we let you go, under the radar at each club, West Coast and Freo, who are you liking that perhaps isn't getting the attention in mainstream media?
I'll start with the Dockers, and I'm going to say Heath Chapman, because we've been looking at that half-back line for Fremantle thinking, since Hayden Young's gone into the midfield, who's going to be that burst, that sort of elite kick coming off the half-back flank. And I think Heath Chapman showed on the weekend against the Bulldogs that he can be that player. He's obviously someone who's had his fair share of injury woes as well, but he was made some really strong and decisions coming off that half-back, and was willing to sort of bite off that one in the middle of the ground and drive the Dockers forward. So he'd be my one at Fremantle. And then at West Coast, he's so underrated that I don't think he's ever really got the attention he deserves, but Jamie Cripps. And he's someone that, funny story, when I was working for the West Australian, we had to submit weekly player ratings after every single game. I got stitched up to do that. And once I was doing the Eagles, and I can't remember who they were playing, but Jamie Cripps played the game of his life, and he's so underrated. I actually left him off the player rankings. He was the one Eagles player I forgot to include, and I got a pretty pointed email from his mum about it. So I apologised to Jamie the other week when I spoke to him in the Eagles rooms for a 2-year mistake. But he's someone who's kicked 4 goals in his last 2 weeks, and we sort of thought at West Coast with the influx of small forwards they've had this year that maybe he wasn't going to be maintaining that place in the side, but he's proven his link-up run is as strong as ever.
That is great. I love the mum sticking up for him as well.
Brilliant.
That's so good. Good stuff, Eliza. Great to chat to you as always.
Thanks, guys.
Eliza Reilly there, Code Sports. Jamie Cripps, I think he's finishing to start the season. He's kicked so many goals from either side, like boundary line, 40 metres out.
Yeah, I think Eliza's, and great reporting from Eliza, she's one of the best in business. I think she's probably been quite kind to most of those in the industry over here in the West. People are saying he shouldn't be in the team. Well, he's the best performing senior player in that side, like right this moment.
Yeah.
His goal kicking has always been elite, Paps. I rate him as the number one in the comp from that either side, so not directly in front, but sort of the 45-degree angle, kicking outside 50. So not necessarily man on the mark outside 50, but him kicking from anywhere near the paint, he is elite. Like, if we got champion data to do some stuff here, I might go to Sir Swamp on this, he is next level elite from that area. And he always has been, to be honest. And he's been one of the most consistent first pick players in West Coast history. Like, I'm talking ever. And I found it borderline disrespectful, those calling for him to be the guy that's stepping down as a player. He's been nothing but consistent his whole career.
In a role that's pretty unforgiving.
Like he'd be the last person I'll be moving on from West Coast. Seriously.
He's been very good, particularly with that finishing, as you mentioned. Scully, great there to chat to Eliza Reilly about everything happening in WA. Well, let's do the injury update on the Footy Interchange with Steve Gravina, of course, a former physio in the AFL, and he joins us from Front Runner Physio in Osborne Park right now. Steve, great to chat to you again, mate. Just getting a bit of a look at some of the injuries across the league. The big news that's come through in recent times is Will Day, who's set for surgery now on a foot stress fracture. This one's really concerning.
Yeah, that's really sad news. So a navicular stress fracture, which looks like it's been confirmed, maybe a recurrence from last year. They're the ones you really want to avoid. They have been career enders in the past. Obviously, surgery is going to require putting a little pin into the bone to try to mend up and allow sort of a fixation point for the bone to heal. That navicular bone is just notorious for a poor healing site. It's got a really poor blood supply, so they don't always heal up really well. And if it gets to a point where it's going to need surgery, it's serious news. And it's a 12-month injury for this case. And fingers crossed for him that we do see him again, because it's one of the worst ones you'll get.
That is absolutely terrible news for Hawthorn. Probably one of, if not the best side in it right now. And he's probably their most important midfielder because he gives them that flair and run and carry and all of that. So we'll be thinking of Will, and that's terrible news. More on the local front here, Stevie, is Luke Jackson and his hamstring injury, and how that puts pressure on the return of Sean Darcy, who's been out for a long time with that infection that he's been dealing with, as well as the knee surgery.
Yeah, no, bad news for Luke, unfortunately. I mean, it possibly was a lower grade one. They looked like they were testing it out, and they just made the call to put him on ice at the back end of the game. I think he had an injury early in his career for the hamstring where he did miss a bit more time when he was at the Ds, but yeah, hopefully this is a lower grade one. But yeah, I guess the bigger news now, how do you manage Sean, who's had such a long layoff, had a successful return in the waffle, but I think they were hoping to be able to nurse him in over the next month and give him a bit of a chop out in the ruck. So it's going to be a real challenge to make sure that the way you bring him in now sets him up for a successful year, that he can survive the full season and then hopefully play finals with them if they get there.
What are sort of the key things you want to see from a player when they're coming back from injury like that, when they've got a history of something, to be able to make sure their workload's at the right level, to have the confidence to go into a game that they're going to be right to go?
Yeah, so the pre-season minutes, which obviously Sean didn't get to accumulate, is a little bit of a concern. But the team, by the sounds, have been able to manipulate his training to a point to get him up to match fitness for waffle level. Now, whether they were hoping to do that with a couple more games, that would have been a better lead-in to give you some more confidence that you've got more minutes at that level to then come into an AFL context. But they're going to have to now find a way through, you'd hope, a bit more of a higher rotation to allow Sean to have a bit of a chop out, because, the 90 to 100 minutes of just a solo ruckman, that's a huge ask for someone that's had such a compromised pre-season. And he just wouldn't have ticked off a lot of those milestones to suggest that he can handle that. So it'll be a high rotation role, I'd imagine, this first week if they've got someone else for a chop out for him. And then depending on how he pulls up, you sort of nurse him through the weeks at training and use that weekend game as sort of your big hit for the week.
And some interesting discussions at match committee, no doubt, at Freo. Like that's just such a huge risk, just given his history. Like not only you'll have to deal with the actual data and what you're dealing with day to day with injuries, Stevie, but the history is relevant. Like it's not like you can pass that off and go, oh, well, we're just going to treat this case by case, because he's been injured in the past. Like that as a match committee will be highly back and forth, I'd assume.
Hard. Yeah, it's really hard because the club are going to lean on, the potential for this guy being a match winner for them. But then you need to come back from a high performance committee going, well, do you want this guy for this week or do you want him for the whole year? And if you want him for the whole year, you need to be really calculated with how you treat him over this next month. And yeah, it might compromise his output because he loses continuity without being unable to be out there, for those extended periods where he needs to work himself into the game. But it's protecting him in the long run. And I guess you'd want a fit Sean Darcy the second half of the year rather than, a match-winning Sean Darcy this week.
Which just brings into all the conversations around his output, like that we've heard in the past, and you start rolling him out and you don't take into consideration he's playing less minutes and then he starts having less touches and less hit-outs and less impact, and you're saying, what are you doing? It's just a constant balancing act that it's going to be really interesting. Hey, Stevie, before I finish up, Jordan De Goey, I think, is an interesting one, subbed off with an Achilles injury or soreness on the weekend. This is post a bit of a Doha session, which has been a bit of a hot topic. How do you see this one?
Well, I mean, this is the exact scenario that Sean Darcy might be facing, right? Like, you've got a compromised pre-season. You do everything you can in the off-season to try to get these guys up, and you may have to rush them back. And now you end up with these little niggles that come and go throughout a season. So for Geordie, obviously, an Achilles ankle soreness where he gets subbed out, where this wasn't his original injury that he missed for, but these subsequent injuries, they creep up because he's just not conditioned for the rigours of the game. So again, he'll miss one or two, settle it down, and then try and recondition him as much as you can and get him back out and manage him through this next phase to hope he survives the second half of the year. But once you start missing these games off the back of a minimal pre-season, your risk of missing multiple games and having these recurrent injuries or subsequent different injuries are through the roof.
Brilliant stuff, Steve. Great to chat to you, mate. Of course, from Front Runner Physiotherapy in Aussie Park. Great to chat to you, mate. We'll talk again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Steve Gravina there with the latest injury update in the AFL. Been a busy show on the Footy Interchange, Scoey. You're headed across to Gather Round, of course, this weekend. So
I am. What are you doing?
Enjoy it over there. I'm still calling some footy, just not going over there. So still be working for 6PR across the weekend, which would be good, and keeping an eye on things. So that'll be fun, and we'll be missing you a little bit. So by the time you come back, I'm expecting you to have done a zip line.
Yep.
And gotten a tattoo.
Of a spoon on my forehead.
Of a spoon on your forehead, or, I don't know, something South Australian, like a pie floater or something.
I won't rule out. What about a redback? What about a spider?
Yeah, redback.
Because I'm arachnophobic.
The old beer? Was that a WA beer?
Maybe. A redback? Was it South Australian?
I'm not sure.
It feels like it would be a South Australian beer.
Yeah.
But I am arachnophobic. I think that would be quite ironic and funny to have a redback on my arse cheek.
Anything is possible in Gather Round, and what happens at Gather Round stays at Gather Round.
Unless it's on your arse cheek, and then you're in trouble.
And then you're going to be putting it on camera everywhere. Scoey, great to chat. People can stay tuned because we're going to have a special drop of all the questions that will come up that listeners have sent to us. It's been great to have everyone's feedback as well. So that'll be coming your way in the very near future as well. But thank you, mate. Go well over there.
Well done. Good luck.
Will Schofield headed across to Gather Round. Looking forward to seeing what stories we'll get out of him next week. But as always, thanks for your company on the Footy Interchange.